One of the ways that I help my clients is that I treat the deals as if I was buying them or selling them. So when I'm doing a deal for my client, I know it's their money, not my money, but I operate it the same way as if it were me buying the property. Probably the biggest part of real estate that I was always attracted to was that growth that it gives people, that they can either level up their cash flow, their investment game, or their primary residences.
If you could speak to the buyers and sellers out there, the individuals that you work with on deals, even the investors, what are a couple factors that you wish they knew more so coming into it?
In a market defined by uncertainty, where every second counts, one opportunity can change everything. Are you ready to make your move? The time is now! Welcome to the Dream is Real podcast.
Hello, and thanks for tuning in to the Dream is Real podcast. This is the place if you're looking to buy, sell, invest, or advance your career in real estate. Before we get started, make sure that you like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. We don't want you to miss a thing as we are bringing you great content. Today, I am with Earl White of the law firm of Earl P. White, all the way from New Jersey. Good to see you, Earl.
Good to see you.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you. You're a real estate attorney, very big part of the transaction. How did you get into the industry?
So when I came out of law school, I was at a big law firm in New York, Proskauer Rose. Though on the side, I should have known and was doing litigation. Though on the side, I was doing real estate deals, like at night.
You're doing your own real estate deals?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So during the day, I was a litigator, but then like at night, I was doing real estate deals. So I probably should have known I was going to go in that direction at the time. So ultimately, after litigating for about maybe 8 years, my salary doing real estate was more than it was, in law. So at that point, I'm like, you know what? This was my passion, was real estate. So it made sense to go full-time into real estate, and I've been doing it since.
Very cool. So you were on, I'm guessing, the investor side of real estate. That was right?
So when I broke into real estate, although I did have my license in Florida, I was never a realtor, but we did have it because sometimes we would do listings with our own properties.
Okay.
So I was never like a formal realtor, but I did have my license. I broke into it doing mostly fix and flips, and I had a partner in Florida. He was managed everything on the ground. I handled a lot of the books and the marketing and the property analysis from New Jersey at night because I was free to do it at that time.
Got it. So now being in real estate for some time, how many years now on the real estate?
I've been doing real estate now for 12 years.
12 years. As far as on the law side?
So I started my law firm 6 years ago.
Okay. What do you think transferred over in terms of being helpful, being in the transaction side, being the investor, and now working deals on the side as an attorney?
So one of the ways that I help my clients is that I treat the deals as if I was buying them or selling them.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, it's not just a transaction to me because they were my transactions. So when I'm doing a deal for my client, I know it's their money, not my money, but I operate it the same way as if it were me buying the property.
Sure.
And that's just because that's how I learned to do it. So I think that does give my clients an additional level of protection. But also, although I'm from the due diligence perspective, that helps my clients, I also have the background of trying to make deals work. Because we did probably over 200 investment deals. But the truth is, to make a deal work, you have to find a middle ground with all the parties, whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side. So I run the deals for my clients with the level of diligence and protection that I would go after for my own self. But at the same time, I do know that when you have a contract, you want to get it fair for everybody, and you got to find that middle ground where everyone can sign and be happy and get to the closing table.
Cool. We'll get into the fine print of everything here in a second, but I'm interested to know what turned real estate into a passion for you. What was it about the chase, about the industry that you said, I love this and I want to kind of pivot, even my law career toward it?
I think the greatest part about real estate is the wealth engine that it creates for you. So whether it's an investment property or you're buying a primary residence, is really are building value, and you're going to improve your life through owning the real estate. So for example, I have clients now that purchased, say, 6 years ago. Even just a simple residential, small condo, $200,000 purchase, right? They're now selling those properties for $350,000 or whatever. We've had a lot of appreciation in the last 6 years.
Sure.
So now maybe their career hasn't gotten so much better to get a large down payment. But they can sell the property they bought 3 or 4 years ago to get an extra $30,000, $40,000 or whatever the numbers are.
Right.
And they can input that into getting their new home, their bigger home, or their next investment. So I think probably the biggest part of real estate that I was always attracted to was that growth that it gives people, that they can either level up their cash flow, their investment game, or their primary residences through ownership and in part through the debt, right? So that sounds bad, but you have a mortgage, say, so you're paying interest on it, right? But you're paying interest on a fixed amount. You're paying interest on whatever, $300,000. But your appreciation causes the value of the property to scale. But your debt is only $300,000, so you're going to gain equity on the full value of the property, and you didn't pay the full value of the property. So it's like magic when you sit down and break. Real estate really is, and there's not many other avenues for investment where people are going to let you borrow $500,000 at 5% or whatever it happens to be, right? You find one other investment where people are going to give you $500,000 to invest for this. It doesn't happen at 5% interest rate. Nobody will. I mean, maybe for business loans, but
right.
For the most part, real estate is unique in that you'll get the financing, and the interest rate's relatively reasonable. So I think the wealth engine is what really attracted me to it.
That's awesome. So what advice would you give somebody out there that's maybe looking to get into investing, hears that, gets super excited? Obviously, you still have to be prudent. So what would you tell the early investor to consider?
So for the person that's just starting off, they need to not overcomplicate it. Because I get prospective clients that call in and they haven't done a deal yet, and they're trying to set up LLC structures. Like they're trying to set up LLC companies in Wyoming that have as a holding company. Sure. Like they're getting so far ahead of themselves. Like you could set so far. So I always will try to bring them back down. Like, look, this sounds great when you have 10, 20 investment properties. Then you can retain attorneys, spend $5,000, $10,000 on this complicated, trust structure. And so don't go down that road. First things first. If you have cash, this simplifies it. But first things first is to talk to a loan officer. Whether it's hard money loans, conventional loans, depending on your investment strategy, figure out what you can qualify for. Because that's going to determine everything else.
Sure.
So there's no point in setting up these. And people don't. You'd be surprised at how often they.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a couple bucks out of your pocket. It's pretty substantial if you want to set things up the way you're talking about, right?
And so then the mind energy and some of the money, like it's just kind of putting the cart before the horse. So first thing to do is talk to a loan officer, because that's going to narrow down your options to what you actually can do.
Right.
So now if you got cash, we'll put that aside, right? Because most new investors oftentimes are not going to be, some do, but a lot of people are not sitting on $500,000 cash to go throw into their first investment property.
Right.
So first person to talk to is your loan officer if you're not one of the ones lucky enough to have all the cash to do it. Once you know what you're qualified for, then you can work backwards to finding the deal. So, okay, this is my buy box. I can buy something, whatever the buy box is. And a good loan officer, who you should have one loan officer and try to use them again as much as possible, because they'll have the picture of what you're working towards.
Right.
And they can help you help you strategize your financing for investment properties. So first, figure out what you can actually buy and how you can do it. And a good loan officer will help you there. So that's step one. Once you kind of see that, then step two is figuring out where you're going to find your deal. Once you know how you're going to find your deal, then you can work with a realtor. You could, lots of different strategies to start narrowing down your deal. And most realtors, let's be honest, they're going to want to see you're qualified. They're not just going to want to take you around,
sure,
showing you a bunch of investment properties because you had a thought. So you get your qualification for what you can make. Also, the sellers aren't going to take it seriously either, like if you're not qualified. So the realtors aren't going to want to do it. Even if you're doing like a direct sale, most sellers will be like, hey, okay, great, you want to buy my property, but where are your qualifications? So once you have your qualifications, you know what you can buy, then you work backwards to find your deal. Most of these deals, you're either going to put them either in your personal name, or you're going to put them in like a single member or two member LLC, right? You don't need to get so complicated. I'm going to bring 3 family members on, and we're all going to contribute like $50,000, and like this is getting so complicated.
Sure.
Like you just talk to the loan officer, he'll probably shut all that down right away.
Right.
Like you know what? Like you're very now. Don't get me wrong. Now, if you have no capital, just say you have no capital, and you have no qualifications, then yeah, you might then have to start getting creative. Who can you work with, like in your family or friend network? But I would say the place to start is figuring out what you're qualified for. Once you know that, then you work backwards to the realtor to find the deal.
Yeah, because transactions, they can be very complex, which once we get into the transaction, I'm sure we'll talk about what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. But often you can create all of these scenarios that are really either improbable, irrelevant, and just a little bit of clarification. So you've just really simplified the process very much, right? Well, how much money do you have access to?
Right, what's your credit?
And what's your credit? How much money do you have access to? And then let's look for the property, and then the fun begins, right?
Correct.
And that's when you need to. You had mentioned, not directly, but something that we touch on here quite often is really putting the right team together, from the loan officer to the realtor to the attorney, which will then hopefully probably connect you with the right title company. So you very much. Will quarterback all of that and try to bring all the pieces together. But before we even get to that,
Can I add one more thing, though?
Yeah, sure, please.
So the order you mentioned is probably the most common order, but you also can go in reverse, right? Like I've made so many referrals to loan officers and realtors to help investors or regular people. Like some of the people contact the attorney first. So it doesn't always have to go to that chain. You know, you can reach out to an attorney if you know them, and they can help connect you to the team too.
Right.
So there's multiple ways to go at that.
Yeah, no, I can back you up on that, right? Because a lot of times you get somebody, you know, like yourself. We've talked a bit, and some of our friends here at Dream Select, where you've probably created a great team around you, right? Some individuals that you like to work with. That, you know, it's just like any other team. You know, you mentioned coming in. You mentioned the Knicks, how they're playing well. They're gelling, right? Real estate is not much different. I mean, unless you disagree, where when you get individuals that seem to gel, they know how the other one works. Everyone works together. Everyone's, you know, of good character and vetted each other for good character. I mean, if you could find a network like that, especially if you don't have a lot of experience in real estate, to me, that's gold, right? So I take it that you've got a good team surrounding you.
So we use a couple of different title companies. We refer probably 3 loan officers out. Because you can't, only so many people you can refer to.
Right.
So we'll refer out maybe 5 or 6 realtors.
Having a good team doesn't necessarily mean that you have that one individual, right? You may have a loan officer that is spot on when it comes to commercial properties, right? And then you might have another one that really specializes in you know, working with military families or something like that.
Right. And then also the distinction between sellers, buyers, and investors. I would say a lot of realtors who, because if you want to be a buyer's agent, you got to be hungry. You got to be really out there showing people properties. Some people that are maybe older in their career, they might want to work with sellers more, you know, because it's hard for them to drive to all these places. And then you also have certain agents that are really good with difficult properties to sell. And maybe they're really you're really good deal makers, right? And if you have and then I have people I refer to for that, where it's like, okay, this property needs $150,000 of work. We need someone that really knows investment deals and can really try to make those work. So yeah, there's each specialty type of property. Usually I have someone in mind. I'm like, okay, look, this will be the perfect fit. Because if you make the wrong fit, it doesn't work for anybody, because then it's never going to work together.
What do you think are some of the biggest contrasts between a residential and commercial deal? From your perspective.
So for the residential deals, they can be a lot more. I know this is going to sound backwards, but the residential deals are often much harder than the commercial deals.
Okay.
In part because there's so much emotion in the residential deals, and there's so many moving mechanics, because it's going to be someone's home, like you said, right? Someone's home. So there's a lot of emotion tied to it. When you have an investment deal, a lot of times it's just the numbers, right? Of course, there could be emotion too.
Sure.
But a lot of times it just comes down more to the numbers. And so the people have less, both buyer and seller oftentimes have less emotional tie to it. So sometimes the commercial deals and investment deals can be a little bit actually easier because no one's so tied to it, or has like moving trucks, or my lease is expiring, I have to go in here. There can be a lot of, residential can be more complicated.
We're selling this for mom, I know when we purchased our home, we purchased it from our home currently from family members. And there was a lot of emotion there, and it was happy. It was bittersweet. It was the home that they owned for since the 1960s. So there's a lot of memories there. But you're right, and with you and your role as the attorney, having to be that advocate in so many areas, you have to temper that emotion sometimes and do what's best for the deal.
The Dream Select Bootcamp app helped me pass my real estate exam and continues to help me to this day as a new agent. The AI mentor comes in clutch at open houses. Sign up today. You won't regret it.
So I have to be very relaxed all the time, because the last thing any clients need is an emotional attorney. So that's the last thing they need. They need someone, and this is for all clients. So the last thing they need is their attorney getting up in arms about something, and it's only going to cause them to feel more emotion, and then to make decisions that are not great for everyone's ultimate goal. So you really want to help your client not get emotional, figure out, okay, what is the end game here? If we know what the end game is, then we'll find a way to get there. If we can't, find that way to get to the end game, that's when negative things happen for everyone on the deal. Like the seller is not getting what they want, the buyer's not getting what they want, and then everyone's getting dragged through the mud. So I think that you do really want to understand your client. The attorney should not be getting emotional. Though my policy is that, like, you'll never see like a snarky or an angry email from me. Like, if something needs to be said, we're going to put it in a formal letter.
Sure.
And otherwise we're just going to keep everything straightforward and try to straightforward, low emotions, keep everyone that's on the transaction not getting, because here's the thing, like, it's just, I don't have too much information, but when you have a transaction, you're working with all these professionals, right? You want everyone to look good. You want nobody to feel attacked. Because if someone, whether it's the realtors, the inspectors, the attorneys, if someone feels like they're under attack, then, or even not necessarily attack in a high level, but like, oh, you dropped the ball. You missed this document.
Sure.
Now we're losing a few days on the closing date because you didn't do what you're supposed to, right? You want to minimize those, because then people get defensive. And once people get defensive, this is when things start to spin out of control.
There are already so many external factors, from encroachment to permits to all this stuff, let alone add the human emotion factor.
And we want to get to the same goal, right? We're all trying to get to the closing table in a way that works for everybody.
For the most part, doesn't want to get to that closing table.
If we can't get there, at least on most of my deals, it's usually because the financing is not approved. And what are you going to think? That is what it is. They can't clear title. If we can't clear title, there's nothing anybody can do about that. And so those are really, and then if there's inspection problems, and that's pretty early, and the parties can't have a meeting of the minds, then the deal's going to fall apart there. So really, those are the three contingencies. Anything else should be able to be worked out amenably between the parties. And even on like the inspections, the due diligence aspects of it, especially with physical, right? When you look at the long term, and I'll try to emphasize this to my clients, when you look at, and this is what I was talking about the wealth engine, when you look at the long term, very rarely does it make sense to terminate a deal for inspection issues. Yes, of course, there are exceptions. If there's going to be $100,000 in repairs, of course. So say you're disagreeing about, say, $10,000, for example. Like, that's a lot of money. But so should someone let either seller or buyer let a deal fall apart for that amount? Like, to me, that never makes sense, right? So you're going to cancel this deal, just say, for over $10,000, $15,000. Okay, you're going to cancel this deal. You're going to start again with another deal ultimately, right? You're going to be out $2,500, $3,000 on inspections. You know what I mean? Where it's going to be, and you could end up with worse conditions.
Right.
So if you really want the property, yes, there's exceptions to that, but you really have to take that wealth engine long-term view. And at least historically, the last 20 years, we've only had appreciation. So canceling something over $10,000, if that's the property that you want, that never made sense to me. So I'll try to encourage my clients to take the long-term view here. If this is the property you want, your alternative is you cancel, pay another $3,000, maybe end up with a worse property, or end up, and then at that point you might be getting in worse shape, or lose more money on it. Maybe it underappraises. Sure. You have more problems. So I was trying to keep that long-term view for the clients.
Yeah, you bring up a good point of making sure that everybody, it's a win-win all the way around, because ultimately the goal is to get to that table in closing. What are some examples of maybe some deals that came pretty close to going awry, and then you pulled it back in through some good mediation?
Okay, so I mean, I could go hundreds of them, but one of the ones that immediately strikes me was a mixed-use property, and we had like a commercial contract, right? And we collected all the leases during the due diligence phase, and one of the leases had a clause in it, had a clause in it that the tenant was supposed to pay like a certain amounts of utilities and common expenses. The seller then, as we got to like 2 weeks before the closing, and we were gathering information about it, the seller said, "Oh no, we haven't been enforcing that." We were like, "Well, why not?" And then they came out and said there was another email between the parties that said the collection of the expenses was an error in the lease. And so they weren't enforcing it. So imagine my client, we get these leases.
Sure.
We look at all the terms, we're like, good.
Because you're also looking at what the overall income potential of the
Yes.
property is, right?
Yes.
So yeah, that makes sense.
So then we get the contract. We were thinking, and we were even okay if the owner was not enforcing it. We were even okay with that because then we could buy it and we can enforce it.
Right.
Just because the owner not enforcing it, doesn't mean we can't come in and enforce
Right,
it.
but if it's already in writing that it was a mistake.
Yeah,
then-
and everyone was in agreement. Okay, so what did we do? So it got very, very heated because this was going to be, it was like, I think it was a 6-year lease, and we're talking, say, $300 or $400 a month, over, I guess it was 6 years there. So we're talking, switching a large
you're looking
sum
at
of money.
$3,600 a year times 6.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So it was going to be well, let's say it was like $500 a month, $6,000 a year, $36,000. Where we're talking about about $36,000 was being swayed by and to their defense, to give fairness, they said their position was that we never told you we were collecting the CAM. We never told you we weren't collecting it. So they said like, hey, look, we didn't tell you we were not collecting the.
So
utilities.
did they report? They reported the number that they were collecting. Was that the?
So this is what they were
argument?
saying. Yeah.
Okay.
So they reported it, but our argument was never that you misreported. Our argument was that we were going to go enforce this.
Sure.
So, but either way, to answer your question, so that got very heated for about 2 weeks. Then eventually I negotiated with the other attorney that basically we're like, well, we're going to lose about $36,000 on this, and we wanted a credit of 15. And so we got the credit of 15. I won't go back all the back and forth, but basically we got everyone on the same page. I told everyone we understand all the. We said, look, we understand you didn't disclose it, but my client's position is we were going to enforce this. So I was like, how do we get this to work? And eventually the seller said, look, you guys have a good point. We said we had a good point to what we were making, and I told the other side, like, look, I hear what you're saying too. That doesn't validate what the buyer was saying. So we met in the middle.
Right.
And that kept the deal
Like
together.
10 years from now, you own the property. The property is appreciated by who knows how much. You have a different tenant in there that you can now enforce that if you wanted to. Do you want to? Are you glad that you hold the property today?
So that's one example of a deal that got very, very heated, but we were able to find.
You were able to pull that out. Okay.
Yeah, we did. We kept that. But this is why, like, if the two parties want to make it work, we'll usually find a way, unless we hit one of those like snags, mortgage approval or title that parties can't get through. But otherwise, most of my deals, probably 90% of them, like once we get the contract signed, they usually move forward.
Right. So just like we talked about earlier, human decisions can make things go awry in the emotion, but at the same time, if it is some of those factors that you can control, and you have a still small calm voice in the room, you can normally get it done. And
that one we had to be the other. In fairness, the other attorney was very good too, and we were really working hard to get the clients to a middle ground on this. But it also goes to show to the realtors, it's like if we want to have a high close rate, let's just say, not me, like the team, a lot of it comes down to how you guys set up the deals. Like if the deals come in and are set up by the realtors, like not well thought out, that's going to create more problems throughout the process. If the deals are put together, and once it comes to the attorneys, we're kind of beyond that. So if the deals, like if the underpinnings of the deal were not strong, then we'll have more problems on the legal side and process side. But if the underpinnings of the deal, based on what the realtors did, the soft science, the understanding that dynamic, not the wording, that's going to go a long way towards not just like once it's presented well to the attorneys, that's going to go a long way towards making our jobs easier and everyone on the same page.
So let's take a look at that. What is it about a realtor that would put them in a position to give you the right information? So what does that look like? So for a realtor to do a good job in putting the deal together, what's the steps to that?
So I think location.
That right,
so location is really important. If you have the person in the right location, they're more likely to keep the deal moving because it's something that they really desire. Also, not stretching the financing too much because all the loan officers involved, the realtors are often the ones kind of at this phase really quarterbacking it.
Right.
So you don't want to put the buyer in such a difficult place where they're really stretched financially, because then that's when you'll run into more problems on inspections, right? Like if they're stretched financially to make this property work to their absolute limit, then there's not going to be any extra capital to cover under appraisals.
Got it. So they're approved for 900,000 and you're showing they made 50 and above.
Well, yeah, I mean, so there's levels of that. So it's not black and white, but I think looking at the financing picture, looking at the geography, looking at like the conditions of the property, at what's the person's expectations versus the client. And I think you guys do like way more than even I know. So, because I only am at the back end. So those are the things that strike me. But I'm sure that, because I'm not the realtor, I'm sure there's a lot. I mean, you guys are looking for properties for 2 years. Or, I mean, sometimes, there's a lot that I'm not part of that I would imagine goes into setting these things up. And then also working magic behind the scenes. Like the attorneys come in, and sometimes we resolve things. Sometimes the realtors will just tell us we already talked and it got resolved. And then we're just doing we did one the other day. Usually the attorneys where we are will negotiate appraisal shortages. There was an appraisal shortage, and first time I saw this, there was an appraisal shortage, and the appraiser had given 2 appraisals. I don't know how, if they did 2, and one of them put a range on it. I've never actually seen an appraisal with a range.
Okay.
But this put me in an odd situation because the way we draft like the appraisal contingency, if it appraises less than the purchase price, then we'll try to negotiate down to the appraisal value.
So was the range, was the purchase price in between?
So the purchase price wasn't in between, but it was like the difference between $5,000. It was a $30,000 range. So I didn't even want to present the issue. I told the realtor, look, I don't even want to present this issue to the attorney because if he's going to key in on it like I am, I'm sure it's not regular, and he's just going to say, hey, look, this is the top of the range. So your appraisal contingency says X, and we're going to give you the top of the range, and we're going to expect you to move forward. But then the realtor's like, let me deal with it. And they dealt with it behind the scenes, and they got a better number. They just told us, hey, this is what we worked out. And then we're like, great. I put together the addendum. We got the addendum signed. The loan was cleared to close in 48 hours. And we closed in, I guess it was 3 business days. So there's a lot that the realtor can also do. Sometimes not just setting up, but behind the scenes, keeping things moving. And that depends on everyone's personalities, how the 2 realtors get along.
Sure.
So
teamwork makes the dream work.
No, exactly.
If you could speak to the buyers and sellers out there, the individuals that you work with on deals, even the investors, what are a couple factors that you wish they knew more so coming into it?
We have to focus contractually, because that's often where I'm coming in. So we have to focus on what are the most critical points of the contract, because we'll always have verbiage that is additional protections, right? And then we'll sometimes have to walk those back. We have to really focus on, like, in the context of this property, in your situation, what are the critical pieces of the contract we need? Let me give you an example. We're talking about appraisals, right? If you're stretched cash, we probably can't make up a lot. So we really need to focus on the appraisal contingency, and maybe you give up a little bit on inspections, like on the negotiation of like inspection waivers or limits on what you can do there. So that's understanding your client's financial position. Vice versa, like there's a deal I had to walk back. So, and this was one a realtor didn't set up. And I never thrown under the bus, but this is what happened. So they came in with a full appraisal waiver where my client was going to have to make up a lot of money if there's an underappraisal. But the deal was set up that he was paying $200,000 above list. He actually didn't have any money he had some money, but he wasn't really, it would have put him in a bad situation to come up with it. And his approval was for a lower amount. So basically the whole appraisal waiver was set up poorly. We spent, I don't know, maybe 2.5 weeks fighting about this appraisal waiver, which I can understand the seller's frustration because I had to withdraw the position.
Sure.
But there was no choice. So because the buyer, with what they were set up for, was to be at serious liability. Because if you're waiving the appraisal and agreeing, I'm going to make up any shortfall in cash, but you don't have the cash, you end up in a lawsuit. Particularly, this was a $1 million property. The sellers have deep pockets, so certainly they're not just going to take it. Hey, if you said you're going to make up cash, you can't do it. That's going to be a problem. So that was an example of one that wasn't set up right, and it became like a large problem where we were fighting. But we did end up working it out.
The deal ended up going through?
Between me and the other attorney, we worked it out. Like the deal was not set up well, and it took 2.5 weeks. But the other attorney and I did work out a middle ground, where basically the middle ground that we came to was that we were going to order the appraisal right away, and we'll have the result back, hopefully in a week. And therefore, if there was going to be an issue, we'd have it resolved very quickly. And then also caveats. The loan officer got involved in this too. So it wasn't a good setup, but then the loan officer, to his credit, kind of swooped in and kind of presented all the different scenarios to the seller side. And so a lot of times loan officers won't do that. But I think it is really helpful when they work with the realtor in particular, because then they can come in when we have a problem and really explain to everyone how the mortgage is going to work or how the appraisal is going to work, because truth is they know it best. They're talking about the team effort. The loan officer really came in there, so myself and the attorney and also the loan officer were able to present the solutions that got the buyer and seller on board.
So it's really a balancing act. It's a team effort to move the deal forward, get to where everybody wants to be, and do so in a way that really has to make sense for everyone as well. Seems like, I mean, you provided a lot of great information, I think, in this episode to really help the audience understand, some of the things that can happen, and we really just scratched the surface, right, of all the things that can happen within a deal. I think I think your clients are fortunate to work with you. How can the audience get in touch with you and your firm to work together?
Sure, you can just Google Earl White. That's my name. Probably be the first item that pops up, or go to www.earlwhite.law.
Awesome. Well, Earl, thanks for joining us today. Thank you as well for tuning in. This is the Dream is Real podcast. If you want to follow us, you can do so on Instagram and TikTok at Dream Select Realty, on X at Dream Select Home. If you want to be part of this program, just give us an email at hometeam@dreamselectrealty.com. Remember, like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time. The Dream is Real.